And the mayor joins us now. Welcome. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Good to be back.
So as you mentioned at that announcement with the lieutenant governor, this is really where the plan goes from the drawing board to getting implemented.
That's right. As a matter of fact, I'm assembling an implementer-in-chief. I think we really want to have some movement on all this. There's still more planning and public process to be done, but we're looking for a lot of the projects that are relatively easy and quick to do, kind of the low-hanging fruit, and then combine that, put more balls in there with longer projects that might take a couple of years to come to fruition. But the timeline is from right now to about 2 years from now for the next stage.
So the 10 winning projects that were chosen, was that all the ideas of the city and people who attended the public hearings over the past several months, or did you present those ideas to the state, to the Empire State Development, and to the governor's office, and they okayed it and signed off on it?
Both. And if you look at that list of projects, many of them didn't even exist this time last year when the DRI $10 million was first announced. So a lot of this was from the public process. We ended up with about $15 million of proposals, and they are all funded either in whole or in part. The one that was only funded in part was to take the Dock Street area where our MLD warehouse is, where the sewage treatment plant is, and revitalize that area by moving MLD out, fixing up the sewage treatment plant so it turns into be more of an asset than a liability, create more parkland, maybe some development down there. They've been giving us enough money to study that notion, but not to actually bring it to fruition. Everything else was pretty much fully funded.
The sewage treatment plant does stay. There are no plans to relocate that.
Not for $10 million. If somebody has about $60 million waiting for us, you know, someday, obviously, it's going to be moved. I've been promoting the idea of having a much broader county-wide or multi-municipal-wide sewer and water authority that could take care of our water needs. As you know, the dams the city owns to the west of the city have a capacity to handle 3 times more water than the city could possibly use. The sewage treatment plant likewise could handle 2 to 3 times as much volume as coming into it right now. It's really overbuilt with Georgia Pacific and the Air Force Base, etc. So these 2 water and sewer resources I view as county-wide or multi-municipal resources. We just need to get to that stage of viewing them like that. At that point, I would imagine that the sewage treatment plant might be located next to a wetlands. Often the most highly state-of-the-art sewage treatment plants nowadays have a symbiotic relationship with the wetlands. The wetlands help in the cleansing process, allows us to do something called tertiary cleaning instead of just the primary and secondary we currently do now. So maybe somewhere up towards Scomotion Creek, in behind GP, some other site might be better for it someday.
Among the winning projects, adding more signs, covered pedestrian walkways and bikeways. The idea is to make it a nicer area leading from the heart of the downtown down to the waterfront?
That's right. Calming the traffic, give it a more of a pedestrian bicycle feel to it. And many of those things are actually relatively easy to do. I think in the next short while we can do more streetscaping. Sometimes the traffic calming and the pedestrian right-of-ways are as simple as lines on a road. We can put up historic signs very quickly. As a matter of fact, we've already designed about 50 of them. We can put up some small performance spaces in different parts of the downtown core, and we can create pathways where people connect from one green asset to another in a kind of a circular route. These are things that we can do actually relatively quickly as we wait for some of the longer projects to come to fruition.
One of the ideas that came up early in the planning was better access to the Saranac River. And this includes that, right. Including an overlook for the Saranac River. Where would that be?
A couple of locations. We've already got the potential for the overlook down by where the Lion Circle is. You often see a lot of the city performances there. We're anticipating perhaps putting a band shell in there, having an overlook right next to that.
Right near McDonough Monument.
That's right.
Along the bank.
But also the areas between the 2 bridges. NYSEG will be coming and doing their reclamation farther down the river next year, in the next couple of years, and then into the mouth of the lake after that. As they do that, they'll be leaving the river more accessible, where we can build overlooks and promenades along that area of the river as well. That then would be an extension of the Saranac River Trail that could now bring people right down to the lakefront, and then hopefully by then right up to Ruger Street and well past the field house and up towards Katyville and Saranac eventually.
And that section of the river is where it's also being looked at for a kayak launch for people that, because there's great whitewater kayaking, paddling right in that area.
That's right. If NYSEG, when they go through the river, if they could help us sculpt it and give some natural whitewater assets there, wouldn't that be wonderful to sit on Bridge Street or on the shoreline and watch the kayakers do their thing?
The centerpiece is still the Durkee Street parking lot. Taking that now, creating residential units, creating commercial space there. Does it also include the park and the greenway that would then lead up to Margaret Street and to the Strand Theater?
Right. We really want some green space in there to connect the Strand Theater through that West Telecom Plaza, down through a green space in Durkee Street, then along the river, up through Monument Park, up to Trinity, and then back through Margaret Street, create a loop. So we don't want massive commercial structures blocking that flow. We want the commercial structures and the residential to kind of work within the flow. And this is something the developers, once we go out for RFPs, they'll give us some feedback on how they think that could be done.
If you lose those parking spots, what do you do about parking in the downtown? There are dozens, if not hundreds, of spots there that are utilized. Do you build a parking garage, a second parking garage somewhere in that lot, or do you look elsewhere for parking?
I don't think that'd be the best place to build a parking garage. As a matter of fact, a lot of the citizens spoke pretty resoundingly during the public process that if we're to look for parking garage, how about if we do it somewhere not next to the river? There already is a small, modest parking garage down by the river there. We'd look for some other properties somewhere within the city. As a matter of fact, most of the money devoted towards developing that corner or that lot is really anticipating finding parking somewhere else. Upwards of 400 to 500 spots. We have about 360 spots there now. If we believe this is going to grow our downtown and our community, we'll need to even put more spots somewhere else, maybe in one large parking garage, or maybe distributed into 2 or 3 above ground parking lots somewhere else in the downtown core.
You'll have to have that parking if you want to attract the business and the residents, because that's part of this plan, is to get millennials and maybe retirees to actually come and live in the downtown area.
That's right, exactly. And to even coexist, one of the ideas is for some of the residences to be mixed active living seniors and millennials all living within the same structure and commingling. The best example I heard for why this is so attractive to live downtown for active living seniors is that when one retires, you're putting aside all your work life. So your entire horizon narrows kind of like this. What you want left in this picture is a lot of activity, hustle and bustle, things to do, restaurants to go to, things in the park, seeing a lot of activity around you. They really thrive on that. To put them on that rocking chair next to on Golden Pond is kind of the last thing that an active living senior wants. They want to be part of the urban environment. So this is exciting for us. So
the $10 million is the down payment. You will look for private money as well to go along with this. Will some of that private money hopefully build additional residential units down there? Is the hotel project for the parking lot behind the train station, things like that, still on the horizon and part of the overall plan?
It is. Certainly a combination of modest commercial but primarily residential is what the developers we've spoken to so far say they'd be interested in doing. But to then go back to the parking lot, sometimes people unfairly call it the parking lot to nowhere because we anticipated having a hotel eventually built down in what we call the Dock Street Triangle. To have something down there again would be wonderful. I think we need to do some work with the MLD still to see if we can figure a way to get that relocated, and something with the sewage treatment plant to abate it a little bit and create more of an asset there rather than a liability. But still, I'm hopeful we can do some development down there as well.
There are some innovative ideas. The food incubator, the shared kitchen space, a place, and other communities have done this, where they allow vendors to come in to create their food products, their prepared food products. They give them space, and then they, in this case, with the North Country Food Co-op, they give them a customer base right there that potentially will buy the products.
And one of the things we've been seeing for the entrepreneurs coming downtown, starting up small shops, especially small restaurants or wine or beer tasting rooms, etc. Many of these entrepreneurs are millennials, actually. that need a little bit of that incubator assistance to kind of get going, but they're anxious to come downtown and show us what they can do. And we've seen a number of great successes in the last couple of years in that, so this will really help that out.
What's the timetable for the 10 projects that were announced in the past week?
Anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. The longer term projects like Durkee Street might take a little while longer, will require much more of an investment in private developers rather than public infrastructure. But some of them we're starting in right away. We're already starting to do a little thing with the one corner of the Durkee Street parking lot. The highway oil building is going to come down next week or so. I'm going to replace that with a little bit of a green space, create a little bit of a holding pattern there, put some picnic tables or something in there. Other ideas, once we flesh out that area, maybe a little splash park in the summer, a little downtown skating rink in the winter. These kinds of things could be done actually relatively quickly. A performance space where we often put up temporary tents in Memorial Park, some sort of permanent performance space that can be used for 3 seasons of the year. That can happen relatively quickly. Historical signs and the streetscaping we were talking about, those all can be done relatively quickly, starting almost immediately.